Good. So we're gonna start. You guys can think of questions as we go along, but we decided that we'd divide it into different categories and speak a little bit about family history. Well, we've spoken about Habonim, and we'd love to hear from Amir on current events in Israel. We've just finished 2021, and a lot is going on, and a lot's going to go on. And then, of course, you have this amazing knowledge and experience of the US and Trump and Biden and where things are going. So, just if we go to the first question, how did it come to be that you live on Nahal Oz?
Oh, that's a great one. So my parents both were born in kibbutzim and left the kibbutz at a young age, 25. My father is from Tzor'a, as we discussed. My mother is from Kvutzat Schiller, which is a kibbutz near Rehovot. And they met in high school. They're high school sweethearts. And they later decided that the kibbutz has been enough for them. And I grew up not living in a kibbutz, living in different parts of Israel. My father had a military career, so we traveled all over, really, wherever he was posted, that's where we lived. And uh, eventually I found my way, like many young people in Israel, to live in Tel Aviv, the big city where everything is happening, especially if you work in journalism, like in my line of work. But Miri, my wife, and I have always had this dream of one day moving to a smaller community, a place where maybe you can raise kids in a different environment where they don't need to cross the road because there are no cars running around, and where you have access to nature and a slower, more community focused lifestyle. But it was something we talked about as kind of a distant dream. And then something happened, and that something was the war that took place in 2014 between Israel and Hamas. During that war, Nahal Oz was the most bombarded place in the entire country. And I, as a journalist, always like to be at the heart of the story and where the most interesting things are happening. And so I ended up spending some time here during the fighting and interviewing people and seeing what the reality was like. It's important to understand Nahal Oz is only an hour and 10 minutes driving from Tel Aviv. It's extremely close. It's 80 kilometers. And yet it's almost like a different reality. And this is one of the difficult things for people to grasp about Israel, really how small it is. From Gaza to Tel Aviv, basically almost nothing of a distance. And after the time that I spent here during the war, I came back to Tel Aviv and I started nudging Miri. Listen, all this talk that we've been having about one day going to some small community, maybe a kibbutz, maybe a moshav. There is this amazing kibbutz on the border with Gaza. It's only an hour from Tel Aviv, and you don't understand. It's so beautiful, and the people are so impressive, and we really have to go there. And luckily for me, my wife is a very adventurous and open-minded person. And so a month after that war ended, in the summer of 2004, we came here to look for apartments. People looked at us like we were completely crazy. Like, what's wrong with you? And we thought maybe we'd be here for 1 year, kind of like an experience, see what it's like, and then we'll see if it's a good fit. And we ended up staying here for 3 years. And I always say that we came here out of a combination of adventurism and idealism, because there also was an ideological element here. And maybe it is connected somehow in a deeper level to the fact that in 2014, both my grandfather and her grandmother, my wife's grandmother, passed away. Both of them died in that year. And they had very different life stories. You all know, my wife's grandmother lived most of her life in Russia and then made Aliyah to Israel with her family in the early 90s when the Soviet Union fell apart. And both of them had these very strong Zionist ideals that maybe somehow were later instilled in us. And the bottom line is we came here out of this more ideological place also, to support a community that was hit very hard during the war. But the reason we stayed is not because of ideology, and it's not because of adventurism. We stayed because we fell in love with the place. We experienced something different than what we imagined. We found a very, very warm and loving and happy community and a place that we are very proud to be part of. And we lived here for 3.5 years, and then I got an offer from Haaretz to go and be their correspondent in Washington, D.C. to cover Trump. And that posed a really big dilemma because on the one hand, we were having so much fun here. We did our wedding here in Nahal Oz. We were living together before that, but we actually did our wedding here in 2016. It was the first wedding in the kibbutz after that disastrous war of 2014. And suddenly, completely diverted our life. But the opportunity to go and cover the Trump administration as a journalist was, I felt, once in a lifetime. I hope it will remain once in a lifetime. We'll know that, we'll know that soon enough. But we were in Washington, D.C., as Karen mentioned, for 3.5 years then. And last year, after the end of Trump, we came back to Israel. We always knew that Washington was temporary. But I think to some people, in family and friends, were surprised that we came back to Nahal Oz, although to us it was obvious that we were going away. Maybe you can compare it in a sense to Shlichut in South Africa in the 1950s. But we came back to our kibbutz, to our home, and now we are living here. It's been now more than a year since we came back. And our daughter, who is almost 2 years old, she was born in America, but now she goes to Gan here in the kibbutz, and she's crazy about it. And every afternoon she goes to the cows and the sheep, and this is what we imagined. So this is a very long answer to the Nahal Oz question. I promise the other answers will not be as long.